I didn't know you were there, so
Oh, sorry. I thought my name pops up on the caption.
it doesn't to me. But
Oh, what do you have? Just a picture of yourself?
I've I've turned Nige off as well.
It's just you.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar. It's a movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar.
Yeah, good to talk about Will Smith just before we get into the lovely bones. Seems, this is going to be a good transition.
I don't know if there is one. I don't think I can put that in. It's just no transition. No transition. Not getting jiggy with it. Just with it. Hello. Nigel's confused. Welcome back to Off Radar. I'm James Smith, and as always, I am joined by James Eatock.
Hello. I just realised on the camera I look really short there. I'm like this.
Hello.
Hello, I'm short. I'm one of the hobbits for Peter Jackson. James Eatock.
A low angle shot going down.
Yeah,
which not many people will be able to see. But anyway,
Second breakfast. I can't even remember what the hobbits call it. Anyway,
well, yeah, I like it. And Neil Brock.
Hello.
Who we call Nige. Yeah, and today we are talking about a film that came out in 2009 called The Lovely Bones.
Is it 2009?
Yes.
Bloody hell.
Can Sally Eatock's done his research on this one?
A long time ago.
What? No, as you know, I rarely read anything before I see a film. I want to be nice and surprised.
Okay.
As I was with this.
And, well, you recommended this one, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I remember seeing it.
Did you?
Yeah, around about like 2015, 26, something like that. And I remember at the time watching it and it being quite a movie that kind of stays with you after you've seen it. And then, never seeing it again until, we watched it for this. I thought that'd be an interesting one to review, I feel, on the podcast. Very dark subject matter compared to a movie like Convoy. But still,
that's
what I always think of when I'm watching a really heart-wrenching, terrible tragedy. I think there is always Convoy.
There is always Convoy to cheer you up.
Exactly. What would Convoy be doing at 1 hour and 20 minutes in?
Exactly.
I think there'd be a fight in a big.
I tell you what, it'd be a truck on a bridge getting blistered by Ernest Borgnine, but
someone's definitely on their two-way as well.
Get him a back door, Nige. But I thought this. I just thought I think this would be a good one to review because and it's all one of those things. Whenever I've seen a film and I have an opinion of it, I always think I wonder what the other two think.
Wonder what they think.
Wonder what they think.
Seen this one before?
No, absolutely. Had. Big Peter Jackson fan, must say that as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, I used to love his old school stuff like Bad Taste and Brain Dead and Heavenly Creatures as well. And then obviously the whole Lord of the Rings stuff and Frighteners with Michael J. Fox. And I had no idea that he directed this. In fact, I didn't even know he directed this until the credits rolled. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Oh, my goodness. So obviously I didn't pay enough attention to the opening credits where it wasn't listed. But either way, I was very surprised.
Remember if it is. Yeah.
Hadn't seen it. I'd heard a little bit about it. Obviously, I knew it was based on a very famous book as well. But really going in quite blind on this one, which makes a nice change.
Yeah, it does make a nice change.
For Nige. Nige is like the film.
That's rare. Yeah,
he's the buff of buffs.
Films normally.
He's literally the buffest buff. I've never seen
buffest buff. Buff Daddy.
So buff. Buff Daddy.
I think you didn't want to use that before, but we'll let
He
you
was
have it
an
again.
ex-wrestler as well.
Ex-wrestler, man. Buff Bagwell. Yeah.
Oh, right, fine.
Who was actually
I thought
quite
that was
fond of his
original.
mother. He was,
Oh, yeah.
even though he was Buff Daddy, he was very close to his mother.
Good.
It's a true story.
True.
Okay. Well, I probably like you, Ito. I probably saw this. I reckon probably I don't know, like at home, like a few years after it came out of the cinema. I'd heard of it. I knew Peter Jackson had done it. Knew it was a book, but that's pretty much all I knew about it at the time. I hadn't seen it since either. So yeah, quite a number of years. And like you say, Peter Jackson obviously directed it. I think this may be our first Peter Jackson film we've done on the podcast, actually.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
You obviously listed quite a lot of the big uns. I would say recently it's interesting how his career's gone, because obviously he's been doing more documentary, and I've been a massive fan of...
He did that
They shall not grow old.
They Shall
That's
Not
the
Grow
one,
Old.
yeah.
And Get Back with the Beatles as well.
And that was
of
something
course.
he took.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, told me to watch, and I basically spent 2 days non-stop watching that, and it was an incredible experience in my opinion. But
I loved it.
I think I watched a lot of Get Back on a flight on the way back. I can't remember if it was from New Zealand. It was somewhere quite far away, because I remember obviously there was a lot to get through. Oh no, actually it wasn't. It was Switzerland, so I'm talking nonsense. But anyway,
so,
Jet Set Nige.
yeah, but yeah, he's done a lot of that. I remember seeing King Kong at the cinema as well.
I
did.
saw King Kong at the cinema
I did.
in like Croydon, and it was probably the rowdiest audience I've ever been in for a film for, which was not the best thing, because it was the completely inappropriate bits, like, oh, we're just on the boat, and you're thinking, at least say it for the bit where everyone's going loopy. But anyway, thanks, Croydon.
I remember like thinking,
Croydon. Yeah.
you know, I've probably expressed on this podcast before, I do not care for those Lord of the Rings movies.
Giant gorillas.
No. I was going to say, I remember enjoying King Kong in the cinema, but I haven't seen it since. And his documentaries, like I haven't seen They Shall Not Grow Old, but what I saw of it was
amazing.
incredible.
Amazing
From what I
what
saw
he
of it was just like, yeah.
Well, it's
Get
funny.
Back was phenomenal. Go on, Nige.
His career kind of, he obviously did Lord of the Rings, then he did this. Then he did The Hobbit, which he had no intention of doing, but only did it because Guillermo del Toro dropped out quite late. Someone dropped out, and he kind of had to pick up the reins. And a lot of it was done rushed. I've seen like documentaries since that indicate like the scenes that they probably spent months choreographing for Lord of the Rings. They kind of had to do in like, let's just figure it out now with all these extras, which obviously meant it didn't kind of hit the same standards. And then since then, he's not really directed any sort of conventional films from what I can remember. It's almost like he's just kind of parked that bit of his career. And obviously for Get Back and They Shall Not Grow Old, he spent tons of time just going through essentially found footage, recolorizing it, digitizing it, all the things that he needed to do. So yeah, and part of the reason I'd never seen this, because I just completely forgot it even existed. It was just one of those films that I probably saw on the front of like Total Film back in like the late noughties, and just passed me by.
Fair enough.
It's definitely I was going to say, it's definitely got a title where once you hear it, you go, oh, that's a title of a film that you're not... You know what I mean? It kind of catches you. The Lovely Bones. It's such a unique title.
It's a unique title and a very good, clever play on what happens.
I can't remember the name of this film. I'm constantly thinking it's called The Lonely Bones.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm like, is it The Lonely Bones or is it The Lovely Bones?
Oh, interesting.
I'm very much looking forward to Nige's take on this movie.
As you say, so based on a book which came out in 2002 by Alice Sebold. Sebold, yeah.
Okay.
And also the screenplay was then adapted by Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens. And she basically worked with Peter Jackson on Lord of the Rings, King Kong, Hobbit. So she's like, a writing partner, or they are writing partners with Peter Jackson. Interestingly,
they managed to adapt the Lord of the Rings books quite well, so you think, they've got a knack of doing this.
Yeah, it's true actually, from books, and obviously King Kong adapted from an old film and story as well. So they obviously do that thing. Interestingly, Steven
Brain
Spielberg,
Dead, obviously from that classic novel.
Yes, that classic novel.
I kick ass for the Lord.
I kick ass for the Lord. God, yeah, that film. Interestingly, Steven Spielberg was an exec on this as well, which kind of makes sense, I think, when you see it. And starring... your
favourite.
My Saoirse Ronan, never gonna stop, give it up. That lady who
I forgot to look up how to pronounce her name before.
We have spoke about her in Grand Budapest Hotel, wasn't it? I couldn't remember what we spoke about her recently, and obviously she's very young in this film, and I didn't have no idea who she was at the time because she did this and maybe Hannah, that other film around this time. But then obviously over the last few years, she had a film last year came out.
The Outrun.
Yeah.
The Outrun's, another film based on a book. And yeah, it's a good film as well, to be honest. A very good book.
And then, Stanley Tucci, as one of you guys mentioned, most recently probably done that Italy documentary where he travels around Italy eating food on the BBC, which is...
I didn't know that was a thing. That sounds great.
Really, it's really good.
Everyone loves Stanley Tucci. He's the man these days.
Yeah, if you watch it, he's just so... Yeah, he just goes back to basically all different parts of Italy and Sicily and eats food and goes and
he's married to Emily Blunt's sister as well, isn't he?
Yes.
He had a partner who passed away and then met Emily Blunt filming The Devil Wears Prada and obviously met her sister and then got married to her. And I think he's like 20 years older than her, so...
Yeah, and also Nige's favourite actor of all time, Mark Wahlberg.
Is Mark Wahlberg in this?
Believe it or not.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Believe it or not. We spoke about him on The Big Hit. Go and listen to that one.
We certainly did.
The big shit.
Rachel Weisz, Susan Sarandon, and Michael Imperoli. He's the cop. He's often in gangster films, I think. Maybe in Sopranos.
I've seen him pop up, as you say, in those kind of
in that role, but he's
gritty movies.
He's almost like a weird kind of gangster role in this, even though he's a cop.
He's in The Sopranos and Goodfellas as well. So
he's in Goodfellas as well.
Ilka film, Summer of Sam as well. But yeah.
And I have written a synopsis.
Synopsise.
So I will hopefully synopsise what happened in this film.
Synopsise away.
Here we go. Susie is a 14-year-old girl who lives a relatively happy life with her family. One day, she takes a shortcut home through a field and meets George Harvey, played by Stanley Tucci, who has built an underground den in the middle of a field. Harvey coaxes her down, where she feels incredibly uncomfortable. She attempts to leave, but he grabs her leg. The next scene, we see a ghostly figure running past her classmate. We learn that Susie has been murdered and is now in the in-between, but she has unfinished business with her killer.
He's cute. Does he like you as much as you like him?
Grandma, would you please just drop it? Hey, Mom! Look at me! Smile! My name is Salmon, like the fish.
Okay, shipmate, take it away.
First name, Susie. Bye, Dad.
Bye, Susie. You are beautiful, Susie Salmon.
I was 14 years old when I was murdered.
You're the Salmon girl, right?
On December 6th, 1973.
And my first note on this film, which I'm going to mention straight off. Start of this film, we open with Mark Wahlberg looking at this snow globe. I think on the first watch, you don't think much of it. However, this is obviously hugely symbolic because, you know right from the off in this film that she is dead. It says in voiceover pretty much in the first. Yeah,
she goes, I remember
minutes, I've been murdered or something. Yeah,
I was 14 years old when I was murdered, and you're like, oh, okay, this is.
This is where we're going with this.
This is where we're going.
Spoiler at all, so you know straight away. But it's a really interesting shot, and I thought a very good shot of this like snow globe, which comes back later in the film that Mark Wahlberg, who is her father, by the way, is looking at, because it's hugely symbolic of where she will then end up later in the film, where she kind of gets stuck in the in-between, as it's called, or the afterlife, or whatever you want to call it. But then we kind of get transported into the 70s, and I really liked this section where there's a song, I wrote down, Dave Edmunds, I Hear You Knockin', and you are transported into the 70s. You've got the cars, the clothes, the setting, and obviously we kind of meet all our main characters within this kind of montagey scene.
Well, quite early on, they do like a time lapse of sorts, don't they? Where it's like Mark Wahlberg and Rachel Weisz are in bed, and she's like reading a book that's all about kind of go-getting and doing all these various things. And then I think it like spans almost 10 years, and suddenly she's reading books about parenthood and their lives have changed. And obviously now they've got a family, and it's a different life for them and a different life for for their family, and the slightly more what people kind of look back on and think, well, it was more innocent in the 70s and 80s, not like today where there's predators all over the place. Well, lo and behold, just because you didn't have the internet doesn't mean there weren't nefarious people doing nefarious things.
Yeah, and I think as the writers and directors do with this film, they put you on edge right at the start because obviously you know she's going to die. So
well, yeah, they put Mark Wahlberg in the film, didn't they? So straight away, I'm on the edge.
You're constantly on edge. You get this. She's like into like photography and stuff, isn't she? And there's this kind
of expensive hobby in the 70s.
Real sense of memories, and you know they emphasize that through showing the glimpses of her life through these little montagey bits where she's taking pictures around the rosebush, but then you also get all these pictures being taken, and it's nicely done because obviously again you know she's going to die, so you've got these kind of like memories that we all hold on to when people die, so it's kind of reminding the audience straight from the off that this is a relatively happy family.
I remember being given a camera for my birthday. I loved the way a photo could capture a moment before it was gone.
There's a scene which I just wanted to talk to you guys about. She goes to like a shopping mall, and
yes,
I didn't notice this the first time around I saw it, and you see like something's up basically, and you think that I think it's a boy is like following her, but in the background you see a real kind of little glimpse of Stanley Tucci for the first time.
Because they kind of focus on a different character that you think is the one.
The red herring, he's like, was it Mr. O'Dwyer or something? He's the guy that when you see him, it's like, oh, he's clearly, you know, it sounds terrible. It's like, oh, well, he's, you know, even though we don't know the bad guys at this point, but
we don't know.
He's the type.
Yes, that's as awful as that sounds, and it's it's interesting that they put that red herring out there from the beginning. And like you say, if you go back, when you look back at the film, you do see Stanley Tucci just in passing in the back. I think it's a couple of shots maybe during the shopping mall.
Very brief, and
four times in that scene. And then Wally,
before you, because this is obviously your first time of watching, did you know that Harvey, Stanley Tucci, was the baddie from the start already before you were watching it? Or
no, again, went in like completely blind, had no idea who was what. I fell for the red herring. I was like, oh yeah, it's probably
really?
that.
Yeah.
And I didn't see him at all, and I only sort of knew that he was in that scene, kind of going back and rewatching / looking up some of the trivia and various other things, and I was like, okay, because I think it kind of says, well, she says as part of the kind of voiceover type thing,
narration.
Narration, she says as part of the narration that like he was there kind of thing, that he was watching her, she just didn't clock onto it, so it was quite interesting, and it kind of adds a sinister air to what should be like a nice relaxing, oh cool, they're going to the mall, she fancies this guy, all this like stuff, the classic stuff of 14-year-old girls.
It's very innocent, isn't it? I do like the framing of that, in the fact that she's at the mall, something you've seen, I know it sounds a bit of a stretch, but in many a 1980s movie, like shopping malls with a big meeting point, and 90s for kids of a certain age, it's like, oh, let's all meet up at the mall, and like even my friends and I did it in like the late 90s. You'd all meet up and go to the Trocadero or something, and very different good times in the Trocadero, but I like it because it's like an innocence as well. I like the fact that she's not at the shopping mall just shopping with her parents. She's interested in the boy, and there's that, like, you know, we know that at some point in this movie she's going to be killed, and it's just like, oh, she's got this love that she's not sure is requited. Is that the right word? She's not sure if it's she doesn't know if this boy likes her back.
Like even in her casting, there's a innocence with her because you know she's got the kind of big blue eyes that she's, you know, they're kind of even more prevalent, I think, when she was younger than when you see her now, where she's kind of grown into her face a bit more.
No, it's true. I've said before in films we've done, I said the casting, especially on women, if you've got a character that you need to be vulnerable, you'll often find actresses with bigger eyes, like I'm trying to think, like you could put like Margot Robbie, Emma Stone, Margot Robbie. Emma Stone's a great shout, actually, like someone who can do vulnerability through the eye acting, and it's yeah.
It's Emily Watson as well, who does a bunch of films. She's got amazing eyes.
Yeah.
In like Punch Drunk Love, I think.
Yes.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, just mentioning the casting actually, like you have. So the author, obviously, she collaborated a lot on this film, and she said to Peter Jackson that ideally they were cast an unknown. Obviously, Jackson spent a chunk of time trying to find someone, and essentially, Saoirse sent a audition tape in, and Jackson and co. and the casting directors and everyone else, they were so impressed by the tape that they had no other meetings or further auditions before they offered her the lead role. That's how blown away they were by it. And likewise, she was more or less unknown when she was cast for this. Unfortunately, before the film came out, she got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for Atonement with Keira Knightley, which came out in 2007. So while she was kind of unknown when she was cast, she wasn't unknown by the time the film came out. Although I would say, obviously, it's a small enough window that I imagine a lot of people, certainly American audiences as well, whether or not Atonement was the kind of thing that they'd watched, she certainly sort of caught people by surprise by... Well, as you kind of been saying, she's gone on to have a ridiculously strong career. So yeah, clearly a very talented actor.
Yeah. And right at the top of the film as well, we get I would say the colour of the film and the saturation, which obviously changes a lot when she dies.
Yeah, well,
but you get all the kind of the like light, fluffy kind of colours. But a lot of the camera work is on a steady cam. And not particular choppy right at the start of the film. It's quite tracking shots and steady cam, and it almost feels like she's looking into the camera in certain shots. And I think that, like, especially later on, it's like she's looking right at you, which is obviously the intention of Peter Jackson and writers and stuff to make you kind of feel like she's like literally telling you this story. And like you say, the narration. There's quite a lot of narration, especially at the start of this film. And
especially at the start, and just jumping into the narration part, there's one character who I'll talk about probably in my review and towards the end of this. Ruth Connors, who's, I think, the student at her school, maybe slightly older. Who, as she puts in as her narration says, she saw things that others didn't, and she's the one that sees
the ghost figure.
Ghost. She sees ghosts, and she sees dead people. To quote another very successful movie,
Ghostbusters 2.
Ghostbusters 2. Oh, nice! That would be the best joke you've ever told.
That was a joke and then a joke within a joke.
Oh, that was so good.
That was good.
Oh dear. Oh my god! I don't know if I can come back from that. But yeah, this Ruth Connors character. Again, oh Christ! So this Ruth Connors character has this like ability to see the dead, and you think, oh, I wonder how this is going to play into the movie. And not to jump ahead too much, but it kind of doesn't until right near the end. But we'll go back to I say when she
dies.
She basically the what do you call it? The heroine of our story is crossing a field, and it's one of those amazing things in this, like, because when you think of like I know this happens all the time and it's miserable, but when you think of abductions and that kind of thing, you always think of it happening like a dark, secluded thing at night. Here we've got like an open field, and the camera like beautifully showcases I think there's quite a few wide shots when it's Stanley Tucci's character, what's his name, Mr.
George Harvey.
George Harvey, yeah.
That is quite often called Harvey in this film as well.
Yeah, we'll refer to him as Harvey. Poor
Harvinator.
Poor Andrew Harvey. Sorry, Harves. But yeah, you've got this Harvey character, and like I said, the heroine of our story, and it's all done in wide shots, and it's just like, it feels very isolated, but it's still very open. You think, oh, anyone's going to see this.
Yeah, it's like daylight, and it's dusk, isn't it?
And I think that's part of the frustration, isn't it? Because initially she goes down, and she goes down and he's showing her things, and it's
like this little den he's built underground. Which
you're thinking, what, basically?
You know, as the audience, this is it.
And even she does, though. Even she goes down initially. She's
because she's so smart. She's on it very quickly. She cottons onto the fact she needs to find a way to get out of here.
I think it's a really well done scene, because the tension is so.
Yeah,
because this is coming, and even if you didn't know it was coming, it's like the den underground is lit with all these like little kind of candles, and that gives it this kind of innocent kind of warm glow.
Well, like the meticulous detail, all the stuff he has in there, for kids. Look at this!
Like games
look at this.
And stuff.
She finds it cool. Yeah, it's like a den for the local kids to play in.
It's the equivalent of like a treehouse, but what's almost cooler than a treehouse? Like a den underground, a secret base of operations.
The adults can't see what we're up to.
Personally, I would have gone down there at my age now. 47-year-old James Eaton would have gone down there. I mean, I'd like to think I'd last better, but you think in that situation, you would be like, oh, this is really interesting.
Would you like a refreshment, Susie?
Actually, I have to go.
No, be polite.
His attitude very quickly changes in the sense of it's not like he just suddenly goes from being like, oh, what do you think? And then, it's like, oh, now it's his warmth is going into somewhere else now.
And you get these massive close-ups of his face and he's sweating and he's
got the other thing, they give him contact lenses, don't they? Because
Yes.
Stanley Tucci, I think, has got very dark eyes. And that was the thing I remember about this movie more than anything, weirdly, was in the close-ups of him, he's got these really light blue eyes. Nigel's probably looking up trivia right now, I hope.
I mean, that's good. I didn't realise that's good trivia, but it makes sense for an Italian
He's got these light blue eyes. Yeah.
He basically said he wouldn't take the role as, God forbid, but this is what he is, a child molester, unless he was almost unrecognisable. So he had his skin lightened, his chest and his arm hair was dyed to match his like comb over blondie brown wig, wore false teeth to alter his jawline.
Wow.
You've obviously mentioned the blue contact lenses. He actually had a lentil-filled fat suit to widen his girth, and those square-framed eyeglasses. Obviously, we're kind of used Stanley Tucci to wearing those round glasses.
Yeah.
And obviously the moustache and the sideburns. And this is how much he wanted to distance himself from the role. Because,
but I think the lenses really kind of add to the menace, because I know it sounds horrible. It's no disrespect to people with light eyes. I've got rather light eyes.
Blue eyes.
But it's
I've got
more.
blue eyes.
With
Get in my den.
Evil podcast. You get in my den, Nige. But it's that thing of with much lighter eyes, you can almost. It sounds. There's almost like you can do more emotion in them to a degree. Again, we're going back to eyes being such an integral part of sometimes an actor's performance. And I think Stanley Tucci's dark eyes just. On him, just make him look like a handsome guy. But the light blue eyes with, the like Nige said, all the kind of stuff, he's got the false teeth and the skin line and the stuff and the comb over. He just looks so menacing. And it's like he's not got vampire teeth or he's not a monster, but he does look like a monster. And there's some earlier shots of him before where we see him working on the doll's house. And it looks like he's a monster, and I think that's obvious. I may be like, oh, I can't believe I've uncovered this information. But he's like, I think at one point he looks in the roof of the doll's house, and it is like a monster looking in on this house of like he builds these beautiful doll's houses, but him looming over them, it's like, oh, that's really creepy. Given what we know, yes, sinister, perfect wordsmith. But yeah, she But what do we see, Smith? She escapes. She goes up the ladder. She looks at the ladder, goes up. Hooray! She escapes.
I thought, oh, he must catch her again in a minute. Like, oh, he must chase her down, and then suddenly she literally runs through someone. It's like, oh, she's a ghost.
Yeah.
She's a ghost. She's a ghost.
And this is good because in the film we've gone from all these kind of like I said, like quite fluffy colours, and then all of a sudden the mood firmly changes just after this scene where we get the mist. Like, is Peter Jackson very obviously kind of influenced by just the whole look of this film, I think, with the blues and the less warm colours. It's all quite obvious stuff, but it's actually done really well. And like you say, when she runs past that woman, you're like, oh shit, this is not necessarily the film that you might think you were watching if you don't know the story. Well, in your sense,
Nige. It's not When Dreams May Come with Robin Williams.
Well,
and I was very disappointed by that.
To be honest, it's funny you made that comparison because I know, jumping ahead slightly, like some of the scenes when she's in the in-between or whatever it's called is really like that film.
Well, that's the thing. I just looked it up.
I've never seen that.
It's basically a film about Robin Williams where I can't remember I've never actually seen it, but the idea is that he's sort of in the afterlife, or like someone sort of takes their life and he has to like fight his way to something or other. And there's a lot of like dream-like sort of afterlife, the in-between, whatever you want to call it, type things. That film was released in 1998. This book was published in 2002. Obviously, this film was made in 2009. obviously it's the kind of subject matter that's been considered for generations, but I do wonder if there was any influence from what was not a particularly successful film onto this. But certainly it like you say, Smith, it goes into that kind of dreamlike fantasy, and it's basically, I think Peter Jackson has a lot of fun, I would say, almost bringing out these different styles and looks compared to, obviously, I don't know how descriptive the book is. I've never read the book, but I imagine he had a hell of a lot of leeway to kind of create this secondary world.
Yeah, you get all
can
these
imagine, like,
big colours and trees, and the trees, like, the leaves come off, and it's hugely imaginative. And if you do watch What Dreams May Come, which I've not seen since it came out, there's I don't know if there was influence or not, but it's very similar in the look and feel of that film, albeit this is probably done much better. But also, what's clever about what Jackson does with this is it obviously contrasts to the bleakness of what's happened in the reality of the world. Did you know you can now subscribe to Off Radar? It's a movie podcast on YouTube. You can watch exclusive trailers and listen to brand new full episodes. All links and info in the description down below.
Somebody stop me!
But she's running through like the town, and she goes back to her house, and but the house is like empty, and she's like, this is weird. In fairness to her, she clocks on very soon. There's a room with the light. She opens the room, and it's like a very white and brightly lit room, and it's it's like there's all this, the bloodied clothes and stuff, and there's like a
bath scene as well. Is that, maybe that's a bit later actually?
No, sorry, I was talking about that. I thought that's when she goes back to her house, and she goes into a room that's in her house, but it turns out it's almost like his bathroom.
But it's really well done.
It's really brutal,
because
it's really brutal.
The way
she screams.
It's like dreamlike, like you say, but you see Tucci in the bath, but you don't see his face, which is really impactful, because he's got like a flannel over it or something. And
I mean, we know it's him already.
Exactly. Exactly. But again, it's like that playing with his character to the point where we don't necessarily see the rage, we don't see the death, but we see, we imagine that, and that makes it more impactful, I think.
When you think about it, it's kind of weird, because it's not like what you would expect. Like, someone's committed a murder, they go in the shower or have a bath, and they get out. It's almost like he's relaxed. He's laying there in muddy waters, bloody waters, because he's just murdered. He's got a thing, and it's just all the heat and the kind of mist from the it's like
he's almost bathing in the afterglow of doing it.
That's there you go, Nige, perfectly
lovely.
put. That's exactly what it is. He's as Nige said, bathing in the afterglow. Maybe that's what the title of this film should have been, Bathing in the Afterglow.
Oh my, that was the sequel.
Bathing in the Afterglow with Mark Wahlberg.
Well, Mark Wahlberg, we haven't actually talked about Mark Wahlberg yet. I think he's toned down a bit in this film, right?
Well, he knows the film he's in.
Yeah.
It's like, Mark Wahlberg is a good actor. It's just sometimes the films he's in is questionable, put it that way.
I think...
So...
Go on, Nige.
Well, yeah.
Think about Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights, I think, is a fantastic movie. He's great.
Boogie Nights is
I think
he's very good.
He can be, and he is in some good films. But yeah, there's certain elements to him which I kind of get... Nige's point, which I remember him saying, like, he can be quite an annoying actor for some reason, but
well, he's got that face, and it's Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Like, we remember him from the 90s, where it's like, oh, she got freckles. His adverts with was it Kate Moss, and look at me holding my jack. I got it. Yeah, it's real and snug and fit. Yeah, motherfucker. But honestly, go back and watch those adverts.
In this, amazing. I do feel. I feel like I forget. It's like I think he does a decent job in this. Basically,
yeah, he reins it in.
So this is a huge kind of bit of trivia, but it's definitely worth bringing in at this point to kind of
bring it in,
indicate why this happened. So he wasn't the original cast member.
For
that
Robin
role.
Williams.
Of course it was.
Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come. No. And he only came in one day before shooting began.
What?
So he had so little amount of prep time. It was actually Ryan Gosling was cast as the dad. When they started
he's
doing,
probably old enough to be a brother.
Well,
right?
This is the thing. So he was only 26 at the time, and obviously the dad is in his late 30s. During the read-through sessions, Gosling was like, "This isn't really working. Like, I'm too young."
Yeah.
And Peter Jackson was like, "No, with proper makeup. You're a method actor. You'll be able to do it fine." And Gosling, because he's such a method actor, basically said, I don't think I'll be able to do a good enough job. I don't think the audience will be convinced. They'll just be like, oh, it's Ryan Gosling underneath some latex. I don't even know how famous Ryan Gosling was at this stage, like 2009. Like, he's not the superstar he was, but certainly he would have been known.
He was known.
But yeah, like Gosling had like gained 20 pounds, he'd grown a beard, he'd done all these things. And it was, as I said, he just felt he was too young. And Mark Wahlberg had just finished completing shooting on The Happening in Pennsylvania, which was where a lot of this film was shot. And basically said, oh yeah, I'm kind of here. It's fine. Yeah, I could do it. Although he was one of Peter Jackson's like alternates, like one of his first choices. Yeah. But whilst Gosling was kind of like, oh, after I quit, I was left fat and unemployed because obviously he put on that 20 pounds. But I think it would have, I mean, yeah, I'm biased against Wahlberg. I'd be interested to have seen how it would have been with Gosling instead. But it was what it was. And yeah, we had that family dynamic with Rachel Weisz. You've obviously got Susan Sarandon, who comes in as the mother to kind of look after the family in inverted commas, because she can't even look after herself. She's a bit of a drunk. She doesn't really care about kids. She raised them with a very interesting parenting style. And yeah, but a lot of the film kind of from the point of the murder is about what's left for the family that's left behind. Like that, they struggle to deal with it. They struggle to grieve. That they want answers. They're working with the police. There's quite a lot that kind of goes into that family dynamic. We after see the fact, really.
It's true. We see the different ways that that people are grieving. So with Wahlberg's character, he's obviously he knows something's wrong. He's trying to solve. Yeah. He basically gets obsessed with trying to find the killer. The mum is just
as you think
breaking
one
down.
Would.
Yeah, you would. The mum is kind of breaking down. The grandmother, Susan Sarandon, comes in and is like, I don't know, a slightly
she
alcoholic.
Seems very kind of cold.
Yeah, cold
to the fact that there's been a murder.
And there's one really weird scene where it's like Mrs. Doubtfire on drugs, and there's a montage, and I'm like, what? That
feels like a.
That doesn't feel like it should be in this film. Yeah, and like there's a montage and a song, and it felt so out of place. But
Susan Sarandon, you use her.
Yes, I will get a montage
her up.
but yeah, the narration also comes back. I would say, I don't know, I can't remember how far, but it comes back throughout this film. I thought it was fine at the beginning. I felt like, yeah, when it starts coming back again and again and again, I did get a bit like, oh man, they keep bringing the narration back in, and at times I don't think it's needed. But yeah.
Well, you kind of have to have her opinion on a lot of the things. Yeah. And it's obviously difficult to do without physically bringing her there as like a ghostly figure. And obviously at this point she's somewhere else, but she can kind of see what's going on. So I understand it. I agree that, yeah, from a plot device perspective, I
think it's more the way it's done, because she's literally talking. She's like talking to the audience. She's like, you know, I'm going to tell you what's happened, rather than in other films where it's like reading a diary or, you know, talking to someone else. But the narration is used in a slightly more clever way. I think it could have been done somehow like a diary or something. But yeah,
I see. You keep talking about diary. You basically want to say we recorded Bridget Jones's diary as our Christmas.
Oh God, yeah, that's where it's coming from.
So please go back and listen to that, which also has some narration in. Good day.
It's true. But in this afterlife, she obviously kind of meets some other characters as well. So she meets this little girl who has also kind of stuck in the in-between. I can't remember her name. Was it Polly or something? And that is fine, that relationship with her.
That's fine. It's fine. She's allowed to have friends. It's Holly, actually. Holly with a H.
Holly with a H. But yeah, like there's some really good scenes, some really tense scenes later on.
I like the one of my favourite scenes is, I mean, it's a bit of a almost like a cliche scene, is when the cops are interviewing him for the first time, and he's so kind of charming almost, or he's playing like the loner, like, oh, you know, I'm clearly no threat. Look at my doll's house. There's a great pull focus scene before we get to the doll's house where he's talking to the cop, and they're talking about Susie going missing. And I can't remember why, but he turns and you get a great pull focus, and on the doll's house is her bracelet, or her, like the thing, you know, like the keeps something to his victims. The token.
He has to get it.
And so it pulls focus, and he's like, right, I need to get that without, like, he's thinking, I need to get that without anyone seeing. And they have this great scene where they're kind of looking at the doll's house, and they're each looking through the windows of the dollhouse or whatnot. I love the directing on it, because again, it's you know, he's going, oh, this is great work. And every time he goes to another part of the doll's house, Stanley Tucci's character kind of looks at what he's looking at, even though there's nothing to see there. It's just every time he's trying to be ahead of the police. There's definitely an element where I think, and I've seen documentaries on this about real killers, where he's one of those murderers that thinks he's smarter than the police. It's like, I can outplay these guys, and it's almost like, I think part of the thrill,
almost leaving clues,
almost leaving clues,
like a game,
a lot of serial killers apparently do that, don't they? They're kind of like,
I've seen enough bloody documentaries on Netflix over the years, and it's just like, wow, I'm not saying that's definitely a character trait he has, but you do get that element of, he's clearly an intelligent man, but he thinks of himself far smarter than he is, and especially with regards to them trying to uncover this crime. It's like, well, he knows something that they don't. I think he loves that power of
like normally he's outsmarting children, basically.
Yes,
so
there you go, Nige.
He's probably got a lot of that element from those situations. Like they kind of say, the first murder for serial killers, it's normally they make mistakes, they're nervous, etc. But we sort of soon begin to learn that this isn't a one-time thing for him. It's something that he's been doing for many years, and is a sort of clearly a horrendous person. So
the other thing about her being in the afterlife as well, as we've been talking about, or the in-between as we'll call it, it's like Smith said, beautiful sprawling vistas that kind of seem like change, almost like emotionally. There are scenes where when she's like getting upset, or her father's getting upset, because there's a connection between them, which I thought was really beautifully done. The world, the afterlife in which she's in, kind of changes and gets dramatically darker or something, and the afterlife is emotionally driven, and it's this whole thing about, we haven't really touched upon, where she can move on and she can I guess ascend to heaven and live happily ever after, or whatever, but it's that thing of, she needs to, and it's, I guess we've seen it in Ghost with old Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore. It's that thing of, I have unfinished business, and it's I mean, it's somewhat of a cliche. It's like, it's been done probably a million times before, but again, I do like the I kind of touched on it just then. She can kind of not speak to her father like, Dad, I'm over here, like I say, like Patrick Swayze and Ghost, but he can sense that she's there, and it's a very powerful thing.
There's a couple of moments, and then there's this symbolism comes back, like I said about the snow globe earlier, but there's also this ship in a bottle, and that again, like, this is like the kind of being trapped thing, and I think later in the film he smashes it because he's but it's really well done, and I agree, like some of these scenes in the in between or afterlife are breathtaking, like especially for the time, 2009, like visually I
want to say the music as well. So I was watching this for the first time since I saw it all those years ago. I'm thinking, God, I love the music in this after, the music throughout the film is
it starts beautiful, very like eerie and drony, and as you would expect, right? And then
there's like a hopeful, and I couldn't believe when the credits roll, and I was like, of course it's Brian Eno, because Brian Eno has done stuff over the years. One of the films I remember him doing the soundtrack for was a film called, I think it was The Jacket, with Adrian Brody and Keira Knightley. I saw that, and Craig Daniel Craig. I nearly said
Craig
David. Daniel Craig David. But I saw that my friend
amalgamation of both of them.
There we go. But I saw that at the cinema, The Jacket, and the thing that stayed me, it was quite a good film. But the thing I remember most is the music. It really kind of music that's emotionally driven, tonally. It's almost haunting, beautiful, bittersweet, all these different words. And I'm watching this film and I'm being reminded of that. And then the credits roll, and I was like, oh, Brian Eno. But I thought, the music in this movie is so kind of, it really does complement everything. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Brian Eno. So Fran Walsh, who's obviously involved in the writing side, was a big fan of his work and mentioned it to Jackson. Obviously, they were trying to get some of his early tracks for the atmosphere from the 70s scenes. And then when Eno sort of was speaking to Peter Jackson, he asked if he could just compose the whole score, to which Jackson was really surprised, because he had heard that Eno just didn't like working on films. But even for the film's ending, Eno uncovered a demo he'd actually made in 1973. Reunited with the vocalist that originally recorded it and did the proper version for this film, and basically said, I've done something from the 70s has finally finished in like 2008. So yeah, and it was surprising that sort of Eno came and did this film. And again, I had absolutely no idea. It wasn't until kind of seeing the credits like you, Ethan, I was like, oh my God, Brian Eno did the music for this.
I do. There's one thing I think one of you touched upon earlier was the. I think both of you did. Families moving on, and I think that this film does it really well. In
that was the other title, working title for the film.
Families moving on. I think a typical film would be the mother and the father must they must solve this together, but very quickly their marriage, understandandly, kind of starts to fall apart. And the mother leaves. She just leaves, and it's Mark Wahlberg as the father still trying to solve.
He just can't let it go, can he?
He just can't let it go, and it consumes him. There's one line which I really love in it. I think it's maybe halfway through the movie, just shortly after the murder. She says something like, "There was one thing my murderer didn't understand." Is how much a father would love his child. And I was like, that's really powerful, because that's the thing of, he's killing this girl. He has no idea that this guy is going to fucking, move heaven and earth.
Quite literally, yeah.
To find the murder of his daughter.
And there's a really good scene with Mark Wahlberg and Harvey in the garden where
that is
he's building that little hunter's den, whatever it is.
But the other thing is the positioning of it is right next to the rose bush, and all the roses are dead. Which obviously in the scene earlier, if you remember, they're all bright red and the life, which is again
they look very weird. Those roses.
They're so well. It's almost like exactly. It's like, I don't know, the in between, isn't it? It feels not real, and I guess that's the point of those little snapshots that she's taking pictures, and you never see his face in those little pictures, do you? Right at the beginning, but anyway, this scene, the tension between the two, because kind of Wahlberg's kind of figured it out really now, but at this point,
he's slowly figuring it out.
It's kind of clocking. It's like, this guy. Why are we not going back to this guy? Why are the police not looking into him? In my best,
but he's cried wolf too many times. That's the problem.
And Harvey
basically been on them all the time.
Kind of knows that he knows. So there's this cane.
Well, he says to him, I think it's time for you to go home now, Mr. Sam. And he quickly goes into his house, and Mark Wahlberg's like banging on his door, and it's like, oh shit, it's. But
it's a really tense scene, but it's really well done.
Really well done, yeah.
I think it's time for you to go home now, Mr. Sam.
Harvey starts looking at the sister, Susie Salmon's sister, and it's like, oh no, now he's gonna go for the sister, and that's where you think, in terms of a killer, you think the last thing you want to do is go for someone so closely
obvious,
related,
right?
because then but it's obviously he feels so. Almost like I said earlier, it's like
safe.
He feels smarter.
I am invincible.
I'm invincible, and it's like, I can do this, and no one's going to suspect me because I just outsmart everybody.
And the sister,
the sister goes in his house.
Yeah, that scene was also excellent.
So good.
Again, it's like she's creeping around upstairs, and I think we've talked about this in other films where you've got that tension of him coming back home. And she's creeping about, and she's like, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, there's a noise, and he rushes upstairs, and there's loads of quick cuts. It's really well done. She dives out the window, but it's I thought.
Yeah, we discussed Paddington, didn't we? Because that kind of like mocks it in the sense of like they just get caught very obviously, just like and there's not really
a little bit different, but
should have hid behind a curtain.
Paddington 2, actually.
It was Paddington 2 in the house, of course.
Another podcast you can go back and re-listen to.
Nige's just pimping.
Yeah.
Stanley Tucci's Harvey has Susie Salmon's body in this safe in his. I think it's in his basement.
Yeah, it is in his basement.
Oh, it's really grim, and
because it's been
basically
cut up and done.
And basically the safe is pushed into the thing, and it's heartbreaking because I remember watching this movie the first time, and that just absolutely breaking my heart. 'Cause it's like the family will never get a proper burial because her body is in a safe, and obviously it's going to deteriorate, and no one's ever going to. And the sinkhole will be covered, and she'll forever be. Her body will never be found, and it's just like, that's fucking dark, man. There's no conclusion to that. But as Smith was getting to, I feel like a really bizarre scene where
she has this weird connection with Ruth, because Ruth obviously has this element where she sees dead people, to see dead people, but also like almost like kind of feel and sense, and almost they get to this point where she like almost basically quantum leaps into Ruth, and it didn't work for me, this scene at all.
Susie Salmon jumps into Ruth's body, and then he's aware that it's Susie in spirit, and they obviously have sex. If I remember rightly, they have.
Wow.
Yeah, they do the thing, and it's a really. It's a scene that I don't think needs to be in the film. It's one of those where it's just like,
it's not about,
I didn't need to,
the whole film is not about that relationship. I don't think, like, she's.
I think because it's such an intimate act, and it's the jumping of the. I feel like just a loose connection, like of the boy.
Reminded of
realizing
her,
how much
like
something
being
like that,
able
rather
to move
than
on from her and him. But like for me, like her, the family is the most, like you've said throughout most of this podcast, family is the most important thing in this film. So it feels like odd to me that they've kind of made this almost like the climactic part of the film, So it really didn't work. And also I feel like the sci-fi element was just a bit like, it just took me out of the film. It just felt like,
it sounds like you're reviewing the film.
Well, just this part of it as well.
This section I'm going to give 3 out of 5.
I haven't told you what I'd give the opening credits yet. But yeah.
No, obviously, so I guess the last thing we'll talk about is the baddie gets his comeuppance in a very bizarre scene again. There's ice in the trees, and I guess magically a random icicle drops off, knocks him on the bonce, and he falls off a cliff and dies. And they make sure to show you that it's a very painful death, because it's like, well, he's a monster. And it's like, I'd rather he went to prison for the rest of his life and got like destroyed by other prisoners, but okay, I guess this is the baddie getting his comeuppance.
Yeah, it's very graphic, and you see like the bones and.
Well, it has to be.
Yeah,
they're like, look,
it didn't
what
have
he's
to be,
done.
because originally it wasn't. It was actually left to the imagination once he fell off the cliff, and basically test audiences were like, no, I want to see him mullered. So they actually last minute reshot to basically have him violently tumbling down the cliffside and getting his comeuppance.
Give us some trivia, Nige. He looked like
there is quite a lot of trivia about this, surprisingly so. So the film actually differs greatly from the novel. And now the novel, Alice Sebold wrote, there's a disturbing rape scene which is recounted in great detail, partly because she was raped in real life.
As in the
author was raped.
Fuck.
Yes, so she had a very tough time of it at a young age. And she was so a lot of the adult content in the film was stripped out, partly so it became like a PG-13 and got that kind of wider release, partly because some of it was just so brutal that the actors weren't comfortable filming it. So essentially, the major storyline from the book that was cut was that Abigail Salmon actually had an affair with a detective, which is kind of hinted at but doesn't actually happen. And that's the reason why she leaves the family. It was actually filmed but cut out of the movie. And in the novel, Jack Salmon, rather than being attacked by the boy with the baseball bat, actually has a heart attack, which is why she comes home. So there was kind of those elements. And then obviously, because the full-on rape scene was cut before she's murdered, Alice Sebold disagreed with the admission and kind of said to Peter Jackson that she wanted to have it in, but he said he felt that he had to admit it because the reenactment, the ordeal, would have not just overwhelmed the movie, but certainly the young actress playing the role. And even Stanley Tucci came out and said it was hard enough for him to play scenes where George is just thinking about molesting her, and to actually have physically performed a rape scene and have it filmed, he wouldn't have done. So I can totally understand why that happened, but obviously it does change the film. Like I said, it goes from being like an adult film to more of a young adult film, although obviously the subject matter is hard to say. But there was a man who was charged and spent 16 years in prison for raping Alice Sebold, the author. Wow. But he had his conviction overturned in November 2021, because there was flaws in the prosecution. Then in March 2023, he was awarded $5.5 million for wrongful conviction and has been completely exonerated. So of course, I mean, this is something you could probably not suitable for this podcast, but it's very hard to get rape convictions and everything else. But yeah, it's just quite a bizarre situation to have occurred. Stanley Tucci was actually nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for this film. The only sort of Oscar nod that he's ever had in his career, I believe. He said he based his performance on the performance as George Harvey on the serial killer Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. Do you know what BTK stands for? No. This isn't a fun game. Blind, torture, kill. So you can get a rough idea of what that serial killer was like. So again, very horrific kind of background to this.
Probably in Mindhunter, that series.
Yeah, I did wonder that as well. So, but yes,
because there's a character that looks quite similar to. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
A couple of more before we wrap up. So Jackson explained he enjoyed the novel because he found it curiously optimistic and uplifting because of the narrator's sense of humour, and so there was a huge difference between its tone and of course its subject matter. He also went on to say there's very few films that dealt with the loss of a loved one, so that was part of the reason why he found this a really interesting project. And then last one, bit of Peter Jackson again. Cameo from Peter Jackson. Did you spot Peter Jackson? He was the man with a movie camera in the pharmacy when Jack Salmon picks up the prints from the first roll of Susie's film. So Peter Jackson very often has a little cameo in his own films.
Feels like a weird film to do a cameo in, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if it was M. Night Shyamalan, he would be the killer, wouldn't he?
He'd be a doctor in there, and
no, he'd be the guy who solves it.
Yeah, yeah, he would.
So there you go. That is Peter Jackson and the Lonely/Lovely Bones, depending if it's Nige, you can remember what it's called.
Well, yeah, there you go. Nicely said, Nige. So yeah, what are our ratings out of 10? You recommended we watch this one. Where are you? What did you think?
So, yeah, it's interesting, this movie. So, like I said, the first time I watched this movie, it stayed with me, as you would expect, 'cause it's one of those movies that is kind of haunting, especially shortly after you've seen it. But I was surprised all these years later how much I'd forgotten about it. And like I said, it was like seven or 8 years since I saw it. But I couldn't remember much about it at all. Which I was like, does that mean it's a good movie or a bad movie? And yeah, there are parts of this movie that I think are truly wonderful, and I think for the most part the acting is fantastic, from the girl whose name I won't attempt to pronounce, but Susie Salmon, and Stanley Tucci, who are great. And as we've said, Mark Wahlberg, ticks a box and does his job.
Get out there, Mark. Get on camera and do your job.
Yeah, do your job, Mark. But no, I think the performances really do carry a lot of this movie. It's weird. I think I wrote down in my notes, I love the fact that this is all about, it's less about death and solving the murder. It's more about coping with death, especially with the characters that remain. I think that's the really powerful thing about this movie. It can be seen as, it's just this kind of, like Nige said, film that is probably for late teens, early 20-somethings that explores how are we going to solve this murder. But I think when you look at it, it's like Jackson puts that, there's the wonderment of it all, but there's also that grounded thing of how do people cope with death, and especially obviously the death of someone so young with so much ahead of them. And I think the thing we didn't talk about too much is her level of creativity. She's such a promising young human, as it were, as melodramatic as that sounds. She's this photographer.
Promising young woman. Another film you can listen to on the podcast.
The podcast. But there's this element where she's got so much ahead of her, and I think that's why it's so obviously tragic that it's robbed away from her. But I think one of the things about this film is, I think your attitude towards death, the afterlife. I'm talking as a person watching this movie, your attitude towards death, the afterlife, I think can kind of alter your perception of the movie. Because for me, I don't want to get too deep, but for me, death has always been one of those things that I absolutely am terrified of. Whether it be family, friends, anybody, people. It's just the idea of it always terrifies me, and it's also like the complete level of finality of it all. And it's like, but the world existed before I was here. It'll exist after I'm gone, which is such a bizarre thing.
It will not with you, Etok. The whole world will blow up.
The whole world collapses after I've gone. But I was, not to get into too much, but I was very young when I lost my grandparents, and like there was a girl I used to work with at the civil service who she died when she was 23, and I was 23 at the time, and that really hit me hard because someone, again, so young, she died. She wasn't murdered, thankfully, but she died of leukemia, and it was just so kind of hard to deal with that, and it's trying to understand that death itself, I think, is a hard thing to put on film, especially the grief aspect of it. But yeah, I feel like I'm going off track and talking about something completely different. But I feel like, yeah, like say you're I don't know. This film hits me emotionally because of its not necessarily because of it's the death of a child, but it's the haunting aspect and everything that comes after that, because I think, like I said, that's what the film deals with. All that said, as much as I really like this movie, there are elements like we talked about, like Smith just perfectly described, the quantum leap scene at the end seems bizarre and doesn't seem, the Mrs. Doubtfire montage seems like the kid painting her toenails just seems like from a different movie. Painting Susan Sarandon's toenails just seems like it's from a different movie. As much as I love, like I said earlier, Brian Eno's music and the afterworld, the visuals, sometimes it feels a bit, I don't like using this word, but a bit tacky. I understand what Peter Jackson was going for. And I don't know if you mentioned Spielberg was an executive producer. I wonder how much of his influence was on this movie, because it does have those kind of, I love Spielberg, we all do. But he has a certain style of filmmaking or storytelling. And you're like, he was an executive producer. We know that producers do have a say in certain things. And I'm like, I wonder how much of his was like sugarcoating this. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. Aspects of the afterlife, the in-between feel really weird. I think the strongest part of this movie for me is Stanley Tucci's performance and the dealing with grief rather than, how are we going to solve this mystery, Scooby-Doo? And yeah, I don't know. Anyway, all that said, I think I'd give this movie I want to say an 8 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite high. It's very high.
Well,
that's good. Good score.
Thank you.
Nicely said. Nige? That was a pause.
To follow up that review, I fucking hated this film. I really disliked this film. To the extent that, oh, goodness me.
Wow.
So,
go on.
What I did like about this film, what I did like about this film was Saoirse Ronan, like she plays that childlike wonder really well. But yeah, outside of that, my goodness, my favourite bit was the fact the end credits were like 15 minutes long, because when it got to the end, I was like, oh my God, it's finished. There's not that extra 15 minutes I have to go through. I found this torturous to watch, really, really bad, like unbelievably hackneyed from my perspective. And again, I completely respect everything you said, Etok, but it just didn't work at all for me. I thought nearly all the cast was like incredibly wooden and like caricatures, and it was just something about it I just didn't get on with at all. I found a lot of the kind of afterlifey bits just like he was just having fun with CGI, and it was just so preposterous. And I actually watched it with my partner as well, and she largely felt the same way. It was genuinely a struggle to get through this film, and I couldn't believe it was Peter Jackson when it got to the end of the film that had made it. So again, it's just a film that didn't connect with me at all. And yeah, like we left it a little while before we reviewed this film, and I just couldn't face going back and watching it again. Like I just thought, no, I just can't do this. I will never watch this film again. And yeah, I feel really bad for saying all this, obviously, based on, like, Etok, you've just given it an 8 out of 10. You clearly felt very connected to this film, but it couldn't be any further. And like even like Stanley Tucci, I couldn't believe he'd been nominated for an Oscar for it. It just felt, I get it was a really challenging role, and as an actor, you kind of want to push yourself out there and do these kind of things. But I just thought, it was just almost like a cheap imitation of like a I don't know, like you say, like a Netflix documentary style thing. Just maybe I was just in a terrible mood when I watched this film, but I just honestly, possibly for me, the worst film we've watched as we've done this. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. That's how much I dislike this film.
Damn.
So yeah.
Nige,
I think it's a Mark Wahlberg.
If anybody listens to
Well, I think Wahlberg doesn't help. But even like Sarandon, just felt she was so unbelievably wasted. Rachel Weisz, brilliant actress, love her. In this, it's like, why did they even bother with her? Like, I don't feel like, and like you said, like the ridiculous bit about her quantum leaping, and it's just
I think
so
we all agree
much.
that was
like that I just felt, why, like, I'd be very interested, almost as like, there's films that I dislike and they have like that, this is so bad it's good. For me, that wasn't that.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to read the original book, but I don't want to read the original book, just to see how different it is, or whether it's just one of those.
It sounds very different.
But it was clearly a book that was extremely successful. So whether or not it was part of the reason, like, that they decided to do it, or whether it's so different, I don't know. But yeah, not for me.
Let's find where you fall.
And don't be influenced by my review or Etox, for goodness sake.
No, I've written down my score, and I'm going to stick with what I wrote down.
Stick with this.
And
11.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I can't really be influenced by either because, but yeah, It's really interesting. I think I should have gone in the middle of both of you, to put it honest, because I have very mixed feelings about this film. I felt like there's moments in this film where I thought, it's done very well. I really liked, like the kind of build in it. I like the fact that you know she's died. I thought Tucci was good, and I thought his character. I hated him, and the thing is, before watching this film, like I said, I watched Stanley Tucci travelling around Italy not long ago, and I was like, what a nice bloody guy. How am I gonna watch this film and not see him eating a tagliatelle and having a glass of wine? But in this, I thought he was, him and Saoirse Ronan, or however you say her name, were the best things about it. I totally get what you're saying, Etok. Like, death is something everybody can identify with, and I think, clearly not everybody will get something out of this film, because Nige hasn't, but I think that it can...
I got anger and frustration out of this film.
Yeah, you really did. But but the dealing with grief and stuff like that, it's a clever way of looking at it. On the flip side, this is what I wrote in my notes, and we haven't seen this in a while. I'm so frustrated with this film because the potential is there, but I think it ultimately falls short. That was my summary, because I do feel like something is missing in this film. So that, like, Nige, when you said about the kind of the afterlife bit, the bit where she meets the other girl, I think it really loses its way, where she has this like mini relationship with this other girl, and I'm like, oh my god, why am I watching a friendship blossom on the afterlife? I feel like it's kind of lost that loneliness of her being in the in-between, and her trying to find her way back, and I get why she's there. And then when it links back to Tucci, I thought that was just really obvious. I just it was like, so that annoyed me. The Mrs. Doubtfire scene I thought was ridiculous, but I kind of forgave it at the time. It was whatever. The quantum leap bit I hated, and the end I didn't like.
I kind of liked the first 20 minutes. I probably should have said, I kind of liked the first 20 minutes. Basically, up until she gets murdered, I'm like, okay, this is okay. Then the second she ghosted through that other girl, I was like, ooh, and then just off the end of a cliff.
But I do feel like in between all of that, there are scenes that kind of brought me back in. Like I said, the narration bugged me. And maybe I don't, maybe I haven't got a better idea of how they did that, but it bugged me that I'm like, right, I'm going to tell you what's happening in this film right from the off, and then I'm going to come back in 10 minutes and tell you some more. And I thought they could have dialed it down at least. So yeah, I didn't love it.
Fair enough.
I didn't hate it. So what I wrote down was a 6 out of 10. It was okay, but I felt frustrated with this film, I guess, is my be all and end all. I thought it could have been an 8 for me, but it's definitely not one of the worst films I've ever seen.
I love the idea that we've got 3 quite different opinions on this, so I'll be very keen to hear what other people think. Am I being overly harsh? Is Etok
being overly nice?
Smith, just right? Who knows? But I mean, we didn't really mention, like, the film was a success in terms of like box office stuff. So cost 65 million to make, made 94 or 93 and a half, so it wasn't a huge success but did okay. Obviously Oscar nods as well. But yeah,
on
I feel like
it's got 6.6 out of 10. So
yeah, I feel like it is.
It's obviously a bit of one of those films that a lot of people love and some don't like at all.
Bit of Marmite, isn't it? But yeah, it's not one of those films I think necessarily people will look back on in 50 years' time and be like, oh, that brilliant film from the noughties. But then very few films are like that. So yeah.
Convoy.
Apart from Convoy, we started where we end where we began. So yeah, guys, what do you think of The Lovely Bones? Where do you sit on this? Fascinated to hear your ratings. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast.
Channel us through your shit in a bottle.
Yes, smash it, and then put a wig on and be Mark Wahlberg for a day.
That's how you end it. That's perfect ending.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you fancy sending us a film to review or letting us know your thoughts on a film that we have discussed? All of your comments will be read out in our end of season leaderboard episode. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Message us on Facebook. All links and info in the description down below.
Do it! Do it!